Welcome. I'm David Meyer. I'm the Dean of Tulane Law School. I'm really pleased to welcome you all tonight to the third annual Tulane Entertainment and Sports Law Conference. This is a conference that we've held now every year, going back to 3 years ago to 2018. I should say maybe not quite every year because we were all set to go last year at the same time, and then of course a pandemic intervened. So we were very disappointed to have to delay plans, but thrilled to be able to reconvene in this format, and of course very excited to think about getting back on campus and reconvening in person again our next time out. This is really, we're very proud at Tulane and to host the first and still the hands down leading program in sports law in the nation, going back more than 30 years, led by Professor Gabe Feldman, the Cher Garner Professor of Sports Law, the nation's first endowed professorship in sports law. And we're excited to be building and leading strength in entertainment law as well, very much in collaboration with many of our leading alumni who are working in the field of entertainment and sports law, including some of those joining us tonight for this program. So I thank all of you for being here. This has been a big week in both sports law and entertainment law. Yesterday, of course, there were oral arguments in the US Supreme Court in a landmark case involving athlete compensation in collegiate sports. And there were also big court decisions and lawsuits this week involving creative rights, involving the work of Andy Warhol and the music catalog of Bob Dylan and among many other. So this is an exploding and extremely important field, of course. And we're excited to have this conference tonight. We've organized a really star-studded program organized in 3 segments. And the first of the segments that we're kicking off now will focus on a conversation involving creative development and the creative process in film and television and entertainment more generally. Thrilled to have Kevin Yorn and Anthony Zeiker here with us, and I'll introduce them both momentarily. And then we'll take just a short break and come back in a second segment that will be focused on major developments emerging in the field of sports law and the business of professional sports. And that will be led by Tim Francis, counsel with the Cher Garner law firm. And then finally, after another brief break, we'll come back for the third and final segment for the night, focused on developments in television and film, led by Jeff Frost, president of Sony Pictures Television, and another star-studded panel in that group. So pleased you can all be here, and so thankful to want to acknowledge with gratitude Kevin Yorn and Jeff Frost and Tim Francis, each of whom have played a founding role in helping us build not just this conference, but a major and developing academic program at Tulane. With that, I'm pleased to introduce our the first conversation tonight, which will be led by Kevin Yorn. And Kevin is a 1990 alumnus of Tulane Law School. And he found his way to Tulane from New Jersey, and after leaving us, went out to Los Angeles and began his career as a prosecutor with the Los Angeles District Attorney in the turbulent times of the O.J. Simpson case and Rodney King and in that era, and then found his way into founding what is now clearly one of the major and most influential entertainment law firms in the nation. Morris, Yorn, Barnes, Levine. So we're so excited and grateful to Kevin for leading this program. Kevin is regularly named at every top entertainment lawyer list by Variety and Hollywood Reporter and others, and it represents a large number of A-list clients, including Scarlett Johansson and Ellen DeGeneres, and of course, Anthony Zeiker. So Anthony, we're also thrilled and honored that you've joined us. Anthony was born in the Chicago area, but moved with his family at an early age to Las Vegas and was raised there. He is the creator of the television phenomenon CSI, and CSI first aired on CBS 21 years ago, and has grown, of course, into television's largest, a really multi-billion-dollar franchise, spawning CSI New York, CSI Miami, CSI Cyber, and just yesterday, Variety announced that CBS has ordered a new series, CSI Vegas, sort of going back to Anthony's roots. So congratulations to Anthony, and thank you so much, both of you, for being here. And with that, I'll turn the program over to Kevin.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I feel like John Oliver because I don't see anybody, and this is this screen behind me, this blank void. Feels like that if you ever watched that show. Anyway, I usually am there, and we do this event every year. We didn't do it this year, and hopefully next year we'll do it again. I assume it's a bunch of students and others and professors, and glad that you can join us. I guess for my portion of this, what I usually like to do is just kind of keep it easy and answer questions if you want to, and then I can introduce Anthony and we can answer more questions and keep it sort of conversational. I am an entertainment attorney, and I do a bunch of different things within that sort of on that platform. So I have a firm that I've had for about 25 years or so. About 22 years and 25 years actually. Wow. And started sort of from scratch with a few clients, with a couple other people, and we built it up. And we're in Century City, California, and we also have a New York branch. Our clients are sort of scattered all over the country and all over the world, I guess. We work with writers, directors, producers, actors. We work with some companies. We work with the NFL a bit. We work with NASCAR. And our job as transactional entertainment lawyers is really to negotiate deals. We're not the guys that go to court, even though I did spend a good amount of time in court. It was in a different type of law. We're the guys that, when someone wants to make a deal as an actor for a movie, we negotiate their money, their ownership piece of the movie, or their equity that they would get if the movie does well, their size of the trailer they have, all those kinds of things. And that's what we do. I've been really fortunate over the years, and this is why I find law interesting. You can kind of take entertainment law in many, many directions. So I get to work with a lot of really super creative people, one of them who's here today, Anthony. And these super creative people like to do super creative things. So if they might not just want to just write a movie, they may want to write a TV show, they may want to write a Broadway musical, they may want to invest in a restaurant, they may want to invest. Nowadays, you see so many of these brilliant founders of startups and entrepreneurs, whether it be in the tech space or in the consumer space, and people are really, really interested in all these different worlds and landing and sort of lending their brands, especially if they're influencers, people who influence tastes on social media or from movies or from wherever else. And so we're sort of in the middle of all those ecosystems. And when you start getting in the middle of all that, and if you're curious and creative, frankly, you get to get part of that. So be part of that. So, I do get involved in working out deals for people who are investing in companies. I myself try to have my own partnership with companies and I'm not just a lawyer. So I'm an investor. I'm a guy who helps to create beauty brands. I'm a guy who helps create social media companies. I get involved in all of it. It's taken some time, but seeing all these things has really helped me get involved in a lot of different areas. But my job, first and foremost, as an entertainment lawyer, is to be sort of the trusted advisor to my clients. So everything they say to me is confidential, client, attorney privileged, confidentiality. So I hope that, like, when, quote unquote, the shit hits the fan, if something's going on and somebody really needs real advice, they call me. If whether it be financial, whether it be sort of, sometimes personal. We help people when they're buying homes. We help people when they're investing in things. Somebody's got to, fire a nanny, a housekeeper. I am not always the first person they call, but sometimes I am when there's a problem. So we're really involved in a lot of different stuff. But I do think the greatest sort of thing that I've been able to do in my career as an entertainment lawyer is just work with really nice, smart, curious, creative people and learn from them. And then you get inspired by them, and then all of a sudden you start creating stuff yourself. And that, to me, has been my sort of greatest thing that I'm grateful for in what I do. There's different areas in entertainment law, and this is where people like to probably ask a lot of questions. The world changed a bunch of times since I started. We had, before I started in entertainment law, it was the advent of cable television, and cable television, I think, really changed entertainment in a big way. I like to look at these like 4 or 5 major moments. So one moment would be before cable television. Let's think about it, because we're talking about sports later, I assume, or you guys are interested in that. 1958, I think it was, NFL championship game between the Giants and the Chicago Bears. And they decided they're going to televise a football game, a professional football game. Before that, college football was much bigger. And they televised this game, and it ended up being a great game. I wasn't born yet, but whoever won the game, it was close. But they realized that all these people were turning on these black and white tube TVs in their living rooms that had them. And they realized, oh my God, this could be a big thing. And what that was sports on television probably became one of the biggest media businesses we have today, because advertisers will pay lots of money. And that's why ESPN, the precursor to an ESPN is where, the NFL pays, the ESPN pays billions to the NFL to let them license their content. So they realized that pro sports and college sports, obviously, are live sports, are a huge part of business. And frankly, all the companies that we deal with on the straight entertainment side have their sports networks. And so therefore, a lot of the cash and relationships that come from that really help to fund everything. So when you look at Disney, a big reason why Disney is, yeah, theme parks are good, whatever, Mickey Mouse is good, but ESPN is good. LeBron James is good. NFL football, big deal. That's where it's coming from. Second thing so that was a moment. Another moment was, again, as I said, cable TV. Remember, you guys are too young, but when MTV came on the scene, and the fact that people would actually get more than these 5 little channels, the amount of money that the cable companies made and what they did and how they changed the business through working with the telecom, the cable networks, was a huge change, and it changed how these companies did business, and then they became vertically integrated. So when you look at the entertainment companies like Viacom, Disney, that Fox ended up buying, right? You have Comcast that owns NBC, you have Sony, and then you have the other traditionals, and then you have Universal, which is part of Comcast. Then you also have, of course, what's happened in the last few years, the streamers. So when the technology got there, you have Netflix, you have Peacock that's owned by Comcast, you have Disney Plus, and you have Hulu, and obviously Amazon is in the game too. And then of course you have Apple TV. So what is happening now is the regular networks ended up buying the streamers, and some are still on their own, like Netflix, and they're all in competition. And it's been really interesting to see from the outside, because you got to remember, our job as entertainment lawyers is to make deals for the talent and the creators of content. And many, many years ago, and Anthony was there, we held this event at our law firm. It was called The Bridge. And at that time, you had these tech companies, you had Google there. So we invited 13 of the tech companies. We had Google there, Facebook there, YouTube before Google owned them, and then a bunch of these tech folks and guys that invested in tech and gals. Then we had 13 traditional media folks. So we had the head of Universal, head of Fox, big producers like Brian Grazer, and other typical traditional media folks. Then we had creators. So Anthony was there, Matt Stone and Trey Parker from South Park were there. Leonardo DiCaprio was there, a bunch of other sort of creative types. And what happened was we said, guys, no one's talking to each other. So the traditional media and the, which would include the cable networks at that time, was not talking to the Silicon Valley folks, and they were really not talking to the artists. They would air an episode of CSI on YouTube or something, and they were like, you got to pay for our stuff. And it got really crazy. And so what happened at that conference, we really like to think, is that people started talking a little bit, and over time, all this kind of merged together, and they all now work together, even though they're very competitive. And then there was a New York Times reporter there that wrote a book called Television is the New Television. And it's funny. And it's like in the end, Netflix and, you know, CBS has their own streamer, and all of them, they all kind of became one big thing. And in a way, the competition amongst them all to get, you know, the land grab in the streaming business has caused us to be able to negotiate really, really good deals for our clients, groundbreaking deals. Some things have gone away, some of the old type things, and right now I'm dealing with a situation right now, a not to be named Marvel movie starring a not to be named actress, who is expecting her movie to be in theaters, is not in theaters for two reasons. One of them is because of COVID, or will be in theaters, but normally they stay in theaters for about 117 days, and then they go to HBO or to Netflix or wherever. Well, now they want to air the movie and then this in a theater, but then the same day they want to put it on maybe a Disney Plus. And so how does that affect how we negotiate our deal? Because if your deal is based on theatrical and it's people are watching it on TV and someone's paying $30 for it, and there's 7 people are watching it at the same time, how does that affect the participation of the artist? And so there's a negotiation that will go on with that. So things are pretty wild these days, and it's very, very interesting. And, you know, the last thing I'll say is, you know, the rise of social media, and sort of how the marketing by certain influencers is done has made a lot of people stars. I happen to represent these people called the D'Amelios. They, Charlie D'Amelio is the number 1 person on TikTok. She has 108 million followers. Her sister's got 70 million followers.
112.
112? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I don't know. I think it changes every hour. And so, you know, big brands are coming to them, and that's another job as influencers. We're sort of like, as lawyers, we're sort of like, okay, you know, I got to negotiate these deals with these brands, and I got to figure out how to sort of do it in the world of influencers. And that's been a whole new area, and it's very exciting, and it's led me down a lot of different paths, and I enjoy it. And I love sharing all this stuff with my friends at Tulane. I love Tulane Law School. I have lots of friends that are students there. And I'm always there to assist the folks that work with respect to, you know, work and get involved with the entertainment and sports groups there, and anybody who's interested. I'll be there probably in the next 6 months. My daughter goes to school. She's an undergraduate there, but I'm always there to ask questions. And we were going to do something live that's a little more personable and where I can actually look somebody in the eye, and I'm always there to help. I just want you guys to know that. So that's my first thing. So I want to introduce my really good friend, Anthony Zeiker. Anthony was probably my first or second client that I ever had. I met him in 1996 or 7. I don't know. He walked into my office. He was, at the time, he had written an amazing script, and he had some dude trying to that wanted to direct it because it was so good, but he was working in Las Vegas, and he'll tell you the story what he was doing at the time. And he said, I need your help. And I was only moderately able to help him. It was not, I did the best I could. But then we became friends. And then, a year or two later, he says, oh, I have this idea. Here's what I'm going to do. And he created this gigantic series, CSI. And he's done so many things in the creative space. He's so inspiring. He'll tell you some of the things he's done, but that's when you hear what he's done, and then his interaction with us at the law firm. He uses every lawyer at our firm. He knows all of them. He's very diverse, so he does a lot of things. So I have to bring in people who are experts in the book area. I got to bring people who are experts in digital, because he does it all. And he's a great guy and very personable, and I'm glad that he would do this. And I really appreciate you doing this, Anthony. And I'm sure
Thank you. My pleasure. I've been here for 4 hours. I'm ready to go.
Anyway, so Anthony Zeiker. Anyone has any questions, we can wait till he talks, then we can answer the questions after.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm Anthony Zeiker, the creator of the most successful TV show in the world, CSI, Crime Scene Investigation. Created that show in 1999 of August, and we aired October 6th of 2000. And we just got re-upped yesterday after doing 804 episodes. Like Mr. Meyer said, CSI Las Vegas, Miami, New York, and CSI Cyber. When I first came to Hollywood, didn't know anything. I knew Vegas would, the Vegas version of Hollywood, which was not a real Hollywood. And I wrote this movie called The Runner, and I had a best friend who attached his name to it and wanted to direct the picture, had a lot of interest, and Kevin kind of helped me navigate through those waters, because it was very contentious between friendship and trying to get something off the ground. So poor in Hollywood, living in Yucca and D Street, in a terrible apartment complex with no money. And it was Kevin, the Tulane feather in the cap. It was Kevin who represented me for a year, and never took a penny from me, and kept me from dying in terms of all the legal fees to kind of get my career straight, and took me in for a year, which not a lot of lawyers would go ahead and do that, especially on a no-name person like myself. I was driving a tram at the Mirage Hotel for $8 an hour when I wrote my first script called The Runner. And then when I got into town, we had some good traction at Columbia Pictures. Did the movie for $7 million at Blockbuster. It was guaranteed, or it's free. It was definitely free. It wasn't a very good movie, but it kind of started my career. And then from there, we parlayed that into the Harlem Globetrotter story at Columbia Pictures, which again, still didn't get made. But Kevin kind of helped me through that deal. And then my first attempt to do television was CSI, Crime Scene Investigation. I bought a book called How to Write a Screenplay by Sid Field. I wrote CSI in about 4 days, did some great research, and went to ABC, and they passed. Big mistake, Disney. And then CBS pitched them. They said yes. Fox and NBC didn't want to hear it. It was too late in the season for the pitch. And we shot, got a couple of great actors, William Peterson, Mark Helgenberger. We debuted October 6th, thinking nothing was on a Friday, which is a horrible time slot for a TV show. Thursday's the big money day because of advertisers. Friday's a graveyard. We had about 22 million people that particular Friday of October 6th of 2000. They moved us to Thursdays, the money slot. We're there for 12 straight years, spun off CSI Miami, spun off New York, spun off Cyber, and almost 800 episodes later, the rest is history, and here we are.
Nice.
That's the long and short story of the CSI.
So, Anthony, I'll ask you some questions. So,
yeah.
So when you worked on CSI, I think there's two things. One, I guess it'd be interesting as a creator, you're usually a little more leaned in on your deals, and you kind of understand it in a decent way compared to others. how do you deal with your agents? How do you deal with your manager and your lawyer? Like, what's your overall sort of like, how do you use those people in your lives? Like, how does it sort of work as like creative person working with sort of attorney or agent or, manager?
Well, I think there's a large misconception that when you have multiple lawyers and agents and a manager that work with you, our team is, Kevin could be as light as 8 deep, as much as 20 deep in terms of representation. There's a little rumor going around that I'll sit back and facilitate offers. Look, I wear every hat I possibly can and drive as much business as I possibly can until I need help externally by Kevin. I'm my own publicist, my own writer, my own producer, my own networking person, my own creator. I wear all those hats in the business and try to drum up. Sometimes, there's occasions where Kevin may have a job or an opportunity, or my manager may have a job, but it's mostly, I think, me self-driving the commerce of my own personal business in Hollywood. And then we get to the legal part of it, we'll need Kevin's help. Look, I had a deal at CSI. I had no deal for almost 3 years. We were working on the show, season 1, 2, and 3. And, literally by year 1, it was the biggest show ever. And it was Kevin that played not only legal lawyer to me, but he also played sort of psychologist to kind of hang in there, not get emotional, keep it about the work until the paperwork caught up. And once we made the deal, it was great financially, because the thing for television is to stay in the top 5 over the course of 5 seasons is where all the syndication success can be. And we happen to do that. We surpassed Gunsmoke about 3 or 4 seasons in. And it was at a time where the ER deal was just ending, and we were just on the tail end of that. And the definition changed of the back end of television legally. So we just caught that whirlwind under that umbrella. But it was a lot of 16-hour days, 6 days a week for many, many, many years. Kevin was important to go ahead and represent me on behalf of a behemoth CBS, keep me working at a high level, keep the emotions down about the deal, and then get me something really, really great at the very end. And we're still making great deals today. So it was a heck of a run, Kev.
Yeah, so I'll sort of answer one of the questions that came up, and also, or a couple of the questions that came up, and I'll also talk about CSI a little bit. Before there was streaming, which, the guys that own CSI is now CBS, Viacom owns most of it now, and their job, their fiduciary duty, to their shareholders is to eke every bit of dollar out of that content as possible. So, back in the day when Anthony was, after a bunch of years, they went and they syndicated it. So that syndication is not the same as, there's 2 different types of syndication. So there's syndication where it's called first run syndication. And then there's a thing called syndication, which you would see like when you're watching like, an old episode of like, I don't know, some 80s show on TV or something. So second run syndication is where, CSI aired a bunch of episodes on CBS, and then they will go and sell a block of those shows for an episodic amount to, what was the first one, like TBS or something like that, Anthony, wherever it was, wherever.
Yeah, it might have been TNT, TBS. I know we're on
TBS. And so they're basically reruns, and those are those things, and that's where the huge money was in television. And that amount of money they get goes into a pot in which the participant, which would be Anthony, who created the show, gets a piece of. And so that's what makes it very, very valuable. So if you look at some of these old shows back in the day that ran for a bunch of seasons, they ended up being in reruns, and then they had the creators of those shows have a special right through the Writers Guild and through a negotiation by their attorneys and agents to have a piece of the upside. And it ended up that CSI, and Anthony hit on it, because it was so successful in the top 5. The deal was that if the show stayed in the top 5 or the top 10 in ratings, that they would wipe out the entire sort of like loss that they have on the show, meaning basically the show becomes immediately profitable and they get rid of all these costs, then all of a sudden the pot becomes very, very big. So every dollar that they sell it into syndication to a TBS or a TNT becomes fresh cash. And then secondly, there's all these other windows that end up happening. So there was probably 3 or 4 or 5 separate syndication windows. They last for about 3 years. Now we have sales to Netflix, sales to Hulu, and now CBS will have their own has their own streaming platform called CBS, whatever it's called, All Access. And so think about this, guys. CBS is selling selling its own show to its own company, and so it's totally sounds like a monopoly, right? So our job is to make sure that the amount of money that Netflix would have paid for a CSI is the same amount of money that CBS Access will pay for a CSI. You can't, if not, it's self-dealing. And that's, I'm sure you guys talk a lot about that in sports law because it had to do with antitrust and it had to do with free agency and all those other things. So that's stuff that we have to keep our eye on. An example of a deal we did was with South Park, that show, we made a deal with HBO Max for a bunch of episodes of that show, and it was sold by Viacom, and it went to a rival place because HBO Max is AT&T, and that was a $500, $600, $700 million deal to sell those shows, and that's the money, and that's the world, and that's what lawyers have to pay attention to. And we work in partnerships with the studios on those because they own it, but since our clients are pieces of the puzzle and they get a piece of it, we have to be on top of it. Okay, so here's a couple of questions here. How do I transfer a property that has been crowdfunding successful to originally maximum? I'll answer that first question later. Okay. How was I able to carve out a place in entertainment law in LA? Well, it's funny. As the dean said, I was a prosecutor, LA County District Attorney's Office, hardcore gang prosecutor. I only did murder trials, and it was during the craziest time. So like I was walking into the courthouse on 210 West Temple, and in front of me would be, Johnny Cochran and Robert Shapiro, and then this little guy named Robert Kardashian. And he, of course, was the father of the Kardashians. May he rest in peace. But I'll always remember calling somebody up on the phone, and I was like looking, and this is 95, and I'm looking around at all these news trucks, and this is a reality story, and I'm like, this is the beginning of reality television. Like, this is it right there. And it happened to be that Robert Kardashian, whose kids became the queens of reality television, was in the middle of that. So I did that for a while. And how did I get into entertainment law? Honestly, it was not easy because it is really hard and really competitive. It is not easy to get jobs. And you usually either come from a big firm that you've worked at and you started working on some entertainment related things. But to get into the boutique entertainment firm that does work with people like Anthony, that's the firms that do all that stuff. It's really, really difficult. So I applied at a bunch of studios. I got offered one job, but then I met this one guy who said, let's start an entertainment law firm. And I was like, really? And he had this thought about how to do it. And I left my job in the DA's office. I said to him, give me 18 months. If I fail at this, I'll come back. And they said, fine. And we started from scratch. And one of the first few guys I met were Anthony Zeiker, and then he goes and creates CSI. And then I met, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, and I met Ellen. I met these people really, really early. I got very, very, I don't know, I might've been in the right place at the right time, but we had like these crappy little offices. Anthony remembers, I remember seeing him sitting on my couch, and it was funny. And we started out that way, and it was hard. We worked really hard, and I will tell you guys right now, like, work is not that hard if you really love it, and it's never a linear path. And the question asked about how I got there, it was just DA to that difficult, strange. You meet people and then things usually just work out. But if you stay in it, my theory is a year is a very long time. If you stay in the game, in the hunt, things end up happening, and you keep your eyes open, and that's how it really works. So all these people that are really successful or that have done all this stuff, it's because they kind of stayed in there.
That's a good point. I'd like to build on that. You think, I always have this saying, appreciate and respect what's called the happy accident. You know, you sort of like going with one agenda and something else kind of happens that's fortuitous. I was up for the Harlem Globetrotters movie as a writer. I wrote the movie. It never went. That would be considered a failure, maybe. But that script ended up on Jerry Bruckheimer's desk. He was just starting television. He called me in for a general meeting. Attached himself to my next television project, my first one called CSI. Because he liked the writing in the Globetrotters script, it caught his eye for television, and we partnered on CSI in the year 2000, and we're still working on it in the year 2021. So sometimes your agenda for movies can end up with be fortuitous for television, and not to mention, like Kevin says, stay in it. I never dreamt I would be an entrepreneur or run or invent a restaurant concept or a cross that levitates in the home for people who pass away, or launch a children's book company, or do a graphic novel about the Las Vegas shooting, or invent a drone initiative for drone apps. I do all these different diversified things. It makes Kevin crazy because every other month I have a new idea. Some will say I'm all over the place, but I will say that's just incorrect. It's not about being all over the place. It's just being creative. In a country, in a world where you can be creative, as long as you have a really, really good team and legal team that can kind of compartmentalize these deals and let you do what you do, which is just be creative. The world's your oyster in that respect, and that's why working with Kevin is so exciting.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really, really good point, Anthony. You know, it's kind of like I read this thing, wake up and make something. I mean, he's one of these guys that just is always coming up with different ideas and different things. And sometimes it's our job. He does a lot of the heavy lifting himself. I mean, he really does. But sometimes it's our job to connect the dots. Like, oh, I need an independent person to help me with this one little thing, and then we sort of bring that to the table. And that is our job. We try to do a lot more than just sort of negotiating deals, but that really is it. But I will say this, like, for whatever law you're doing, whatever thing, you know, like I have a friend of mine who didn't make law review at a law school, and he's like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to get the big job in the New York law firm or whatever. My grades are still, you know, not the top of the class. I'm not, you know, whatever. That's all. I'm not at Harvard Law School. Like, first of all, you guys are all in a great place. Second of all, it always works out that if you're persistent and you keep your eyes open, this world actually has a lot of opportunity, and there's so many avenues right now. And the biggest thing that Anthony just said was he was working on a movie thing, and then that turned into CSI. I mean, that's really what happened. I mean, the guy who saw it was impressed, and you never really know. And it's about relationships, and it's about spirit. And if you have that energy out there and you walk around with a certain kind of spirit and you keep your eyes open, the world opens up to you, which is, you know, maybe Psych 101 or whatever you read in these, you know, in these self-help books, but it really is true. And you have your good days and your bad days, but you wake up in the morning, you go, okay, what's next? Now, look, world's crazy the last year, right? Like there's times where I've been like, this is just nuts. And, you know, who knew where it was going to go? And it was nerve wracking on businesses, especially. But, you know, as my grandfather always said to me, it'll all be okay. So I think the key is you take one thing at a time. You take what's right in front of your nose and you deal with it while it's in front of you. And then don't worry so much about the future so much. You take care of what's happening, and then you'll be surprised how things kind of work out.
I've got several takeaways to build on that too. I mean, you know, the thing is when Steve Jobs, before he passed away, and I invented this thing called the DigiNovel that we sold at Apple. He told me, you know, the wins and the doing. Never forgot that. And the thing is, you know, I work on things every single day. It's not shiny objects every day. It's just a grind. And then you wake up one day, CSI gets renewed, a concept gets launched, you're recognized for something gets greenlit or is made. Sometimes it's about the quiet grind every single day that pushes it forward. Then you wake up and have this sort of immediate success. I highly recommend doing the thing I did for CSI, which is I broke every single rule in screenwriting. Completely broke every single rule. And I think we're in a world where yesterday's A-lister is today's influencer. I mean, the rules can change. You know, I saw Charlie D'Amelio at 3 million viewers, followers, and I woke up and she was on a Dunkin' Donuts commercial. Then I woke up, she was on a Super Bowl commercial, and now she's bigger than life. It's just that kind of country where, you know, talent, persistence, insistence, consistence can really, really work out for you. And that's what makes it just so exciting.
Exactly. Thanks, Anthony. So yeah, one of the things, skills at a larger firm, a question is that someone asks, what skills at a large firm can you develop that would be marketable for a firm like mine? Here's the truth. All I care about, I don't give a damn about what your major is. I don't give a damn about anything. I don't care what firm you worked at. I don't care about anything. All I care about is that you're able to work hard and stay focused and solve problems. And I don't care in what area, if it was insurance law, it was as a litigator. This stuff that I'm doing is all learnable over time. Everything is. It's about being able to sort of focus down and solve problems. And so if you work at a big firm and you did well and you were able to get from point A to point B because it's technical stuff, then that's marketable for someone like me. And personality wise, like people that are interested in a lot of different things, who are able to, communicate well with us. We're very front facing. So we deal with the clients on a, front facing way, and, they want, and it's working with creative people. But the key really is to sort of know how to, look at a contract or think outside the box, think analytically. And I think that's really the skill set. Doesn't matter what type of law you did and what type of firm you're at.
And Kevin, I think the one thing that has been mentioned that we should just tell everybody, especially the students and the alums and those aspiring to do law, it's very, very important that you take yourself out of the lawyer box and put yourself into the human box, because a lot of times leading with love as a lawyer to your client is the most important relationship you have. Because in this business, you can wake up and have nobody overnight, but your trusty lawyer, Kevin Yorn, will always be there. And sometimes that's just enough to stay in the game. So your role is very, very important.
Yeah, I mean, it's important when you guys practice out there in all fields, whether you're lawyers or you don't be lawyers. This is a very big thing. You got to try to put yourself in the client's shoes. They have their own passions and ambitions, especially creators. I mean, or inventors or whatever. They're all creative, and you have to sort of put themselves in their shoes. They're thinking about like 10 steps down the road. They're thinking about, they're putting themselves out there. They're vulnerable. And I think you got to think that way while at the same time being businesslike and keeping the trains moving forward. There is this sort of empathetic ear, and hopefully when you speak, there's a spirit coming out of you that they feel. And that's been something that I've sort of learned to do over time. And I think it's worked out well.
Anthony and Kevin, I just want to thank you so much. This has been really incredible and exciting. And I have to say, it's been a treat for me just to sit and listen to you both. And your stories, both of you, are so inspiring, and they have such lessons for law students and really all of us. Your message about sort of embrace the grind when it's happening, and trust the opportunities will come, and trust the future, and look for the opportunities is really such an important lesson for all of us. And I just thank you so much for sharing your inspiring stories and being a part of this, and Kevin making all of this possible. So thank you. We will now, we're wrapping up the first segment. I hope you'll all join us in 15 minutes for the second segment of tonight's three-part program. In the second segment, again, led by Tim Francis of the Sher Garner firm, will focus on developments in the business of professional sports. And then we'll come back with Jeff Frost and return to television and film for the third segment. Just a reminder, each segment is on its own separate Zoom link. So you'll have to log out of this one and then log back in on the individual Zoom links that you got through registration. So thank you so much again, Kevin and Anthony. It was really thrilled to meet you and have you both here, and look forward to seeing all of you in the next segment.
Thank you so much. Take care, guys.
Don't agree wave.
Yeah. Roll wave.
Roll wave.